Have you ever wondered how far a mother would go to save her child? Some say that a mother's love is the most powerful force in the world, capable of overcoming any obstacle. But what happens when the challenges are so great that they seem insurmountable? This is the story of Ranata, a woman who, in the face of the impossible, sacrificed everything she had to give her son a second chance at life. What she didn't know was that, along the way, a small act of kindness would change her story forever. It's not every day that we hear a real story like this. It's the kind of story that makes you stop and reflect on the strength of love, the ability to overcome adversity, and the transformative power of unexpected encounters. While many believe that life is just a series of random events, this true story proves that, sometimes, even destiny conspires in our favor. Renata's struggle wasn't just about her son's survival, it was about reclaiming something she thought she had lost: hope. What makes this family story so special? It's not just the sacrifices she made, but how one simple act, helping an elderly woman cross the street, triggered a chain of events that changed everything. Ranata faced challenges that seemed impossible to overcome, but life was about to show her that love, faith, and kindness are forces capable of creating miracles. And you? Do you believe that small gestures can transform lives? If so, get ready to dive into the most moving story in the world, a journey that will touch your heart and leave you with lessons to carry for a lifetime. Ranata was always known for her striking beauty and captivating presence. In her small town, where life followed a peaceful rhythm, she was like a star that shone brighter than the rest. Her long black hair and deep brown eyes made her impossible to overlook, but there was something else that set her apart: her artistic talent. From a young age, Ranata had a natural ability to draw. Her paintings captured emotions that few could express with words. It was as if her art narrated a life story full of meaning. Her teachers believed she had a bright future as an actress, model, or even a painter. Yet, despite all the admiration she received, Ranata was reserved. She wasn't easily swayed by the attention of the young men in her town. Perhaps that's why many saw her as cold or unapproachable. But in reality, she simply had high standards. Ranata knew she wanted more from life and wasn't willing to give up her dreams for just anyone. This made her even more intriguing to others, and her personal journey was like a real story being written day by day. Everything changed when she met Javier. He was handsome, charming, and seemed like he had stepped out of a fairy tale. For Ranata, it was love at first sight. Javier was 17, and she was just 18. But even at such a young age, they believed they had found true love. Within months, they announced their engagement, and shortly after, they had a luxurious wedding that the entire town talked about. Javier was a wealthy man, and he spared no expense to ensure that day was unforgettable. The ceremony felt like a living love story, a perfect chapter in their lives. After the wedding, the two went on an unforgettable honeymoon to tropical islands. When they returned, they were even more in love. Not long after, Ranata discovered she was pregnant. The arrival of Flavio brought a new perspective to her life. The young woman, who once dreamed of grand careers, now found herself enchanted by the role of motherhood. But Ranata didn't give up on her dreams. Once Flavio grew a little older, she decided to study art, something she had always loved. It was as if she were rediscovering herself, living an inspiring story as she balanced motherhood with the pursuit of her personal aspirations. Her life seemed like a dream. Javier was a loving husband and a dedicated father. He worked hard but always made time for his family. Ranata, in turn, was the pillar of love and support at home. While raising her son, she immersed herself in art classes, preparing to enroll in college. Each day felt like it was adding to the most moving story in the world. Everything seemed perfect: family, love, and a purpose that made her wake up each morning with a smile. When she entered college, Ranata discovered even more about her talent. Her professors praised her, saying her paintings conveyed depth and emotion. Each piece was a story with moral lesson, a way to touch the hearts of those who saw them. However, despite the accolades, there was one thing that saddened her: she had no close friends. She had moved to the capital city after her marriage and found it hard to connect with the other mothers or classmates, who had very different interests from her own. Even so, Renata didn't let that discourage her. She knew her family and the love they shared were what truly mattered. Javier encouraged her in everything, from caring for Flavio to chasing her artistic dreams. Renata felt she had it all: a husband who adored her, a son who was her world, and a bright future ahead. It was as if her life was the embodiment of a motivational story, full of hope and promises of even better days. But sometimes, life has unexpected ways of testing even the most perfect stories. Renata's life, which once seemed like a fairy tale, was turned upside down when Javier fell ill. The strong and lively man she knew began showing signs of weakness. At first, they thought it was something minor, like a cold or exhaustion from work. However, as weeks turned into months, his symptoms worsened. Doctors, after countless tests, confirmed what no one wanted to hear: Javier had a rare and aggressive disease. This was the moment when Renata's love story was put to its greatest test. Desperate to save her husband, Renata and Javier turned to every possible resource. All the money they had saved for a new house and expanding their business went toward expensive medical treatments. But sadly, nothing seemed to help. Renata watched helplessly as the man she loved slowly faded away, like a candle's flame burning out. The pain of seeing him suffer was indescribable, but she stayed by his side until the end, embodying the kind of love that endures even in the darkest moments. When Javier passed away, Renata's world collapsed. Within just a few months, she lost not only her husband but also the stable life they had built together. Now, as a single mother, she was left alone with the responsibility of raising Flavio. But what hurt the most was Javier's absence, a void that seemed impossible to fill. Still, Renata knew she couldn't let grief consume her. She had a son who depended on her, and even with her heart in pieces, she chose to fight. Her determination turned her journey into a true motivational story. Financial struggles quickly began to pile up. Without Javier's support, Renata had to abandon her studies and immediately look for a job. It was a hard blow for someone with so many dreams, but she knew she had to prioritize Flavio's needs. With help from her parents, who supported her during the most critical times, she managed to reorganize her life. Even so, Renata refused to rely on them entirely. It was as if a fire inside her kept her moving forward, transforming her life story into one of resilience and strength. Working 2 jobs, Renata slowly began to stabilize her situation. She paid the bills, ensured Flavio received a good education, and even managed to create small moments of joy for him, like weekend trips to the zoo or movie nights. It wasn't much, but it was progress. With each step, Renata proved that even in the face of great loss, it's possible to find ways to move forward. Her perseverance became a living example of how adversities can be overcome through love and determination. What truly sustained Renata during this period was her love for Flavio. He was her daily motivation, the reason she woke up each morning and faced her challenges without complaint. She knew she was writing a true story that one day he could be proud to tell. And in her rare moments of free time, Renata returned to painting. Art became her way of processing emotions, transforming pain into something beautiful. Her paintings began to reflect a depth that hadn't been there before, as if every brushstroke was an attempt to make sense of the chaos around her. Renata believed she was slowly rebuilding her life. Although she still carried her grief, she had found a way to balance her responsibilities with the hope of a better future. However, life, which had already tested her strength in unimaginable ways, had yet another trial waiting for her. A new tragedy was about to unfold. threatening everything she had worked so hard to rebuild. Just as Ranata began to feel her life was finally getting back on track, devastating news shook her world once again. Flavio, the son who was her greatest reason to keep going, started showing strange symptoms. At first, she thought it was something minor, like a cold or the flu, but the signs persisted. Days of extreme fatigue and constant fevers turned into weeks of medical tests and hospital visits. Eventually, the doctors confirmed her worst fear. Flavio had the same illness that had taken Javier's life. It was as if her past had returned to haunt her, making her life story even more challenging. Ranata was paralyzed by fear. The thought of losing Flavio, her only child, consumed her. She knew she wouldn't survive another loss. However, as broken as she felt inside, Ranata decided she couldn't let despair win. She needed to be strong, for herself and for Flavio. Her determination was unwavering, and she repeated to herself like a mantra, "I won't give up on him." It was the kind of strength only a mother could summon, transforming her story into a motivational story that would inspire anyone who heard it. The fight for Flavio's life wasn't going to be easy. The surgery required to save him came with an astronomical cost, far beyond what Ranata could afford. Even with 2 jobs, her savings didn't come close to covering it. So, she made a decision that showed just how far a mother is willing to go for her child. Ranata began selling her most valuable possessions, the jewelry Javier had given her. Each piece was a cherished memory, but her love for Flavio outweighed any sentimentality. That wasn't all. Ranata also reached out to her former art professors, asking for help selling her paintings. While these works of art were her emotional refuge, her way of coping with grief and loneliness, she knew she had to turn them into resources to save her son. Thankfully, a wealthy patron showed interest and purchased all her canvases. It was a small relief amidst the storm. Even so, the money wasn't enough, and Ranata began to consider something unthinkable, putting her house up for sale. Despite the overwhelming challenges, Ranata never let Flavio sense the burden she carried. To him, she was a pillar of strength, always smiling and reassuring him that everything would be okay. At night, she cried silently, but during the day, her resilience shone. She knew that for Flavio to believe in his recovery, he needed to see confidence in her. This was a living example of how love can turn a real story into something truly inspiring. Day after day, Ranata felt like she was running out of options. She woke up early, worked tirelessly, visited Flavio at the hospital, and spent sleepless nights trying to figure out how to come up with the remaining money. Her hope was dwindling, but she refused to let despair take over. For Ranata, giving up was never an option. Her strength in the face of overwhelming odds made her family story one of the most emotional and inspiring journeys anyone could imagine. But life, even in its darkest moments, has mysterious ways of bringing light. On what seemed like an ordinary day, as Ranata walked to the hospital to visit Flavio, something extraordinary happened. A simple act of kindness set her on a path to meet someone who would change her life forever, proving that sometimes miracles begin with the smallest gestures. It was a cold and quiet morning, but Renata's heart was anything but calm. She had just closed the store where she worked and was walking briskly toward the hospital to visit Flavio. Every step felt heavier than the last, her mind consumed by uncertainty about her son's future. Suddenly, something caught her attention. At a nearby crosswalk, an elderly woman appeared confused and hesitant, attempting to cross the street against the red light. Ranata paused for a moment and realized something was wrong. The woman seemed lost, her trembling hands clutching her purse tightly. Without a second thought, Ranata approached her. "Do you need help?" she asked gently but firmly. The elderly woman looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm lost," she admitted. "My granddaughter told me to wait in the car, but she took so long that I got worried and went looking for her." Now I don't know where I am." That moment struck a chord in Renata's heart. Despite her own overwhelming worries, she knew she couldn't leave this woman alone. Taking her arm, Renata helped her cross the street and asked where she had last seen her granddaughter. The elderly woman couldn't remember exactly, but mentioned something about a store with bright windows. Piecing the clues together, Renata thought of a large supermarket nearby and decided to take her there. As they walked, the woman spoke fondly about her granddaughter, and Renata couldn't help but think of Flavio. Though their stories were different, the woman's genuine love mirrored Renata's own devotion to her son. This small act of kindness gave her a brief reprieve from the heavy thoughts that had been consuming her. When they arrived at the supermarket, a young woman came running through the parking lot, her face filled with relief as she spotted her grandmother. "Abuela, where have you been? I've been so worried." The elderly woman, slightly embarrassed, pointed to Renata and said, "This kind young lady helped me. Without her, I wouldn't have known what to do." The granddaughter smiled warmly, thanked Renata, and hugged her grandmother. Renata simply nodded, offering a small smile in return, and turned to continue her walk to the hospital, unaware that someone had been watching her from a distance. That act of kindness, while simple, was more than a coincidence. It was as though life was placing Renata at the center of a true story, where the smallest actions could lead to the biggest changes. The connection between generations, the gratitude in the elderly woman's voice, and the relief on her granddaughter's face brought unexpected warmth to Renata's heart. For a moment, she felt a sense of purpose, a reminder that even amidst her struggles, she could still make a difference. What Renata didn't know was that this brief encounter would not end there. Across the street, someone had been watching her intently. A man, standing in the shadow of a tree, seemed captivated by the scene. When Renata entered the hospital, he waited for a few minutes before following her inside. Something about this woman had caught his attention in a way he couldn't ignore. It was as though he could see the strength hidden behind her tired but determined expression. As Renata continued her day, visiting Flavio and trying to project a confidence she barely felt, fate was already weaving the next chapter of her inspiring story. Sometimes, life surprises us in the most unexpected moments, and for Renata, a reunion with someone from her past was about to change everything. The following morning, Renata woke up earlier than usual. Despite her exhaustion, something felt different. Perhaps it was the small act of kindness from the previous day, or maybe it was the faint hope that things would improve for Flavio. While making her morning coffee, her phone buzzed with a message. Surprised, she picked it up and saw an unfamiliar number. The message read, "Renata, I saw you yesterday helping that elderly woman. It's been so long, but I knew it was you. Can we meet today? I'd like to help." The message was signed by Rafael Silvio, a name that immediately brought back a flood of memories from her past. Rafael had been a classmate of Renata's many years ago. He was the quiet, red-haired boy with a slight limp, who always carried a sketchbook. Renata remembered how he had a kind heart and a remarkable talent for drawing, but back then, she had kept her distance. Influenced by her mother's warnings to guard herself against heartache, Renata had built walls around her emotions, treating Raphael with a coldness she now regretted. Despite this, Raphael had always admired her from afar, trying to win her affection with small acts of kindness. Seeing his name now, after so many years, filled Renata with conflicting emotions. She wasn't sure why he was reaching out or how he had found her. Yet, something about his message felt genuine. After some hesitation, she replied, agreeing to meet him. Raphael suggested a cafe in the park at 6 p.m. As the day dragged on, Renata found herself revisiting old memories while trying to focus on her tasks. When the time came, she arrived at the park to find Raphael already waiting by the fountain. He looked older but familiar, taller, with more confidence in his posture, though the slight limp remained. As Ranata approached, Raphael greeted her with a warm smile. "Hello, Ranata," he said, his voice gentle yet steady. "It's been so long, but I never forgot you." She paused for a moment, caught off guard by his honesty, but managed a small smile in return. "Hi, Raphael. I almost didn't believe it was you when I got your message." They sat down on a nearby bench, and as the sound of the fountain filled the silence between them, Raphael began to share why he had reached out after all these years. Raphael explained how, after school, he had pursued his passion for art. Despite facing countless challenges, his work had gained recognition, and he had built a successful career. He admitted that Ranata had always been an inspiration to him. "I remember you as the girl with extraordinary talent. Even though we didn't talk much, you left a mark on me," he said. He revealed that he had seen her helping the elderly woman the day before and felt compelled to reconnect. "I also learned about your son's illness," Raphael added, "and I want to help in any way I can." Ranata was taken aback by his offer. "Raphael, that's incredibly kind, but I don't know if I can accept," she said cautiously. Raphael insisted, explaining that he had the resources to help and wanted to. "This isn't just about money," he said. "It's about giving back to someone who has always inspired me. I know what you're going through, and I want to make a difference." He mentioned that he could cover Flavio's surgery costs with the help of a friend, a wealthy businessman. His generosity left Ranata speechless. For a moment, she felt overwhelmed by gratitude and guilt. "I never imagined you would still think of me after all these years, let alone do something like this for me," she said, tears welling in her eyes. Raphael gently held her hand. "Some people leave a lasting impression, no matter how much time passes. Your strength and love for your son moved me deeply, and I just want to be part of your story now." From that moment on, Ranata saw Raphael in a new light. He wasn't just a friend from the past. He was someone who cared deeply and was willing to go to great lengths to help her. The future, which had seemed so uncertain, now held a glimmer of hope. Ranata didn't know exactly what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for sure. Raphael's presence was about to change her family story in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The day of the surgery finally arrived, and Renata's emotions were a mix of nervousness and cautious hope. Thanks to Raphael's generosity, the impossible had become possible, and Flavio now had a chance to fight the illness that had been threatening his life. The hospital was quiet that morning, but inside Ranata, a storm raged. She held Flavio's small hands, her smile trembling as she reassured him, "You're going to be so brave, my love. This will all be over soon, and we'll be back home together." Flavio, with the innocence and courage only a child could muster, smiled back and said, "I promise I'll be brave, Mommy." As the doctors wheeled Flavio into the operating room, Ranata sat in the waiting area, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her head bowed in silent prayer. She begged for strength, for a miracle, for her son's recovery. Raphael arrived shortly after and sat beside her. "He's going to be okay," he said with quiet confidence. Ranata looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the comfort of not being alone. In that moment, she realized how much his presence had come to mean to her, how much it helped to have someone willing to share her burden. The hours dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. Ranata paced the hall, her mind racing with thoughts of what she had sacrificed to reach this point. Selling her precious belongings, working endlessly, and parting with her beloved paintings. She repeated to herself that it was all worth it if Flavio could have a second chance. This surgery wasn't just a medical procedure, it was a lifeline, a symbol of her unwavering love as a mother. It was the essence of her family story, a tale of resilience and hope in the face of overwhelming adversity. Finally, the surgeon emerged from the operating room. Ranata stood up quickly, her heart pounding. "The surgery was a success," the doctor said, his voice steady. Your son responded exceptionally well. Renata felt her knees weaken as relief washed over her. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they were tears of joy. Raphael, standing beside her, took her hand and smiled. "I told you everything would be fine," he said. Unable to hold back, Renata hugged him tightly. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of despair lift, replaced by a glimmer of hope. When she was allowed to see Flavio, he was groggy but awake. His small voice broke through the haze of the moment. "Mommy, did I do it?" he asked, his words slow but hopeful. Renata smiled through her tears and kissed his forehead. "Yes, my love. You were so brave. Everything is going to be okay now." She held his hand, grateful for the chance to reassure him. Deep inside, she felt her resolve strengthen. This was just the beginning of their journey toward a brighter future. In the following days, Flavio's recovery brought small victories that meant the world to Renata. Each smile, each laugh, each sign of his strength returning was a testament to their fight. Raphael was ever present, bringing her meals, coffee, or simply words of encouragement. His support wasn't just practical, it was emotional. He became her anchor during the storm, someone who reminded her that she didn't have to face everything alone. This made Renata see her inspiring story from a new perspective. It wasn't just hers anymore, it was theirs. With the worst now behind them, Renata began to reflect on all that had happened. The surgery wasn't just a medical milestone, it symbolized everything they had overcome together. It proved that even in the darkest moments, love, determination, and kindness could create miracles. But as she watched Flavio's health improve, Renata couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over yet. She sensed that a revelation was just around the corner, one that would change her heart and life forever. In the week following the surgery, Flavio's health continued to improve. His cheeks regained their rosy color, and his once exhausted eyes sparkled with life again. Renata spent every moment she could by his side, grateful to see her son smiling once more. One afternoon, while Flavio was napping, Raphael invited Renata to join him for coffee in the hospital's cafeteria. She could sense that there was something on his mind. As they sat together, Raphael finally broke the silence. "Renata, there's something I need to tell you," he said, his tone serious but gentle. Curious and slightly apprehensive, Renata nodded for him to continue. Raphael revealed that he was the one who had purchased all her paintings. "I knew how much they meant to you," he explained, "and I couldn't bear to see you lose something so precious. That's why I asked a patron friend to act as the buyer." Renata was stunned. A mix of gratitude and disbelief washed over her. "You did that for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Raphael nodded, his expression sincere. "I wanted to help, but I knew you wouldn't accept it if you knew it was from me." Renata felt her eyes welling with tears. The thought that someone would go to such lengths to support her was overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You've done so much for me, more than I could ever ask for." Raphael reached across the table and gently took her hand. "I've always admired your strength," he said. "Even when things seemed impossible, you kept going. You inspired me, Renata. You always have." For a moment, she couldn't speak. All she could do was hold his gaze, feeling the weight of his words sink in. Then, Raphael made another confession, one that took Renata completely by surprise. "Renata, I never stopped thinking about you," he said. "Even after all these years, you've always been in my heart. Seeing you again, watching how you care for your son, how selflessly you act, it only made me realize how much I still love you." His words hung in the air, and Renata felt her heart race. She was caught between the walls she had built around herself and the undeniable sincerity of Raphael's declaration. For a moment, she remained silent, processing everything he had said. Raphael, she began softly, I'm not the same person you knew back then. Life has changed me in ways I can't even explain. I'm still trying to pick up the pieces of who I was. Raphael smiled gently and replied, I know. And that's exactly why I want to be here for you now. Not to fix you, but to walk alongside you as you rebuild. His words touched her deeply, and for the first time in years, Renata felt the walls around her heart begin to crumble. As Flavio's recovery progressed, Renata and Raphael spent more time together. They shared memories of the past, hopes for the future, and quiet moments filled with unspoken understanding. Raphael's patience and unwavering support gave Renata the space she needed to open her heart again. Slowly but surely, their bond grew stronger, turning into something neither of them had expected but both deeply cherished. Renata realized she no longer had to carry the weight of her struggles alone. Raphael had not only helped save her son's life but had also reignited something in her she thought she had lost, the ability to trust and love again. Her life story, once filled with pain and hardship, was now transforming into one of hope and new beginnings. Together, she and Raphael were starting to write a new chapter, one filled with love, faith, and the promise of a brighter future. With Flavio finally home and recovering well after his surgery, life for Renata began to take on a new rhythm. The days that were once filled with anxiety and uncertainty were now replaced by moments of gratitude and hope. Raphael remained by her side, offering unwavering support not only as a friend but as a growing presence in her life. He encouraged her to pick up her paintbrushes again. Your art is a reflection of everything you've been through. The world deserves to see it, he told her, his voice full of conviction. His encouragement reignited a spark in Renata that she thought had been extinguished. One afternoon, while Flavio napped, Raphael surprised her with a gift, a small art studio set up in her home. Complete with fresh canvases, brushes, and paints, it was everything she needed to return to her passion. This is your space, he said warmly. A place to rediscover who you are. Renata was overcome with emotion. I haven't painted for myself in so long, she admitted. I don't even know if I still can. Raphael smiled and replied, You're stronger than you think. That strength has always been inside you. It's just waiting for you to believe in it again. Slowly but surely, Renata began to spend time in the studio. At first, her strokes were hesitant, almost unsure. But as the days passed, her confidence grew. Each painting became an outlet for the emotions she had bottled up: grief, love, hope, and resilience. Her art took on a new depth, speaking to everyone who saw it. It was as though each piece told a story with moral lesson, a reflection of her journey. Flavio often joined her in the studio, watching with admiration. "Mom, you make magic with your brushes," he said, his innocent words filling her heart with pride. Raphael, always supportive, encouraged Renata to share her work with others. Together, they organized her first art exhibition in years. The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life were moved by the raw emotion and beauty of her paintings. "This is a true inspiring story told through art," remarked one critic. The exhibition was a success, and Renata not only regained her confidence but also began to build a career that she had once thought was out of reach. Meanwhile, Flavio continued to grow stronger each day. His laughter filled the house once again, and his dreams of playing soccer were rekindled. "Do you think Raphael could be my soccer coach one day, Mom?" he asked with a wide grin, eliciting a warm laugh from Renata. The bond between Flavio and Raphael grew deeper, and Raphael naturally became a father figure to him. It was a relationship built on mutual respect, love, and care, bringing joy and stability to their small family. The connection between Renata and Raphael also blossomed. Their relationship, which had started with hesitation, now felt natural and genuine. Raphael never rushed her, always giving her the space and time she needed to heal and trust again. This patience was what allowed Renata to finally open her heart. "I never thought I'd love again," she confided to him one evening. Raphael smiled and replied, "Love always finds a way." Renata's family story, once marked by pain and struggle, had transformed into a motivational story of hope, perseverance, and renewal. She had rebuilt her dreams, found love again, and ensured her son had a bright future ahead. Together, she, Raphael, and Flavio began a new chapter, one filled with promise and the unshakable belief that even the darkest moments can lead to the brightest beginnings. It was truly a new beginning, a testament to the power of resilience and love. So, what did this story teach you? Perhaps you realized that life doesn't always go as planned, but it's in the toughest moments that we discover our true strength. Renata showed us that love, determination, and even the smallest acts of kindness can turn the darkest chapters of a life story into a motivational story that inspires us all. Now let me ask you, are you carrying a challenge that feels impossible to overcome? Is there someone near you who could benefit from a small act of kindness or a word of encouragement? Don't underestimate the impact you can make. After all, what if the next miracle is waiting for you to take the first step? If this inspiring story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how this story impacted your perspective and, perhaps, even hear about your own real story. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join us for more emotional tales that remind us of the power of love and perseverance. Remember, you can be someone's hero, even through the simplest gestures. What are you waiting for to start writing your own story with moral lesson?